Hello, welcome back to the Nine Sports Podcast Hockey Edition. I am your host, Maya Smith. It's possible that when you are listening to this episode, you will know who won the 2026 Winter Olympic gold medal for women's hockey. We are recording on Wednesday night, so we don't know, but we've seen so many fantastic stories from these Olympics and women who are winning medals. I'm so excited to see how it finishes out for our sport and for the rest of the sports. Today, I'm joined by Silvia Rosas. She is the Seattle Torrent beat writer here at the Ice Garden. Sylvia is one of my favorite followers on women's hockey Twitter, and we also text each other a lot and complain and talk about the culture of the game and all those things. I always value our discussions, so I'm really glad she's joining us today. How are you doing, and what Olympic sport have you been like the most interested in outside of hockey?
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm doing great. I think just writing out the emotional roller coaster that is Olympic women's hockey, especially, I feel like there's nothing like the medal round energy, everything that's going on. You can definitely feel it all the way from Italy. Outside from hockey, honestly, I've not been watching anything outside from hockey. I did watch some of the men's figure skating just because I had somebody who I knew who was competing this time around, and that was awesome
Cool.
to watch. Yeah, and I did watch some short track speed skating. Skating, I think the chaos factor of the short
It's
track
so
is
crazy. Yeah.
it's wild. Yeah, and also women's curling. I've learned a
Mhm.
lot physics wise on the curling side.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I feel like for curling, the like the strategy that's needed, the momentum swings, everything feels a lot like what watching playoff hockey feels like to me. So
Mhm.
it's like this is the first time I've ever paid attention to curling. So I'm having the time of my life.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and it also feels like it's on 24/7 somehow, which is also really funny. Like, I didn't know there were that many times that you could play curling, but yeah, it's been great. Awesome. So we're gonna start the show by talking about the nine or the one number one at the nine, as always. We are gonna talk about the quarterfinals and the semifinals that have led up to the medal round here at the Olympics. We'll preview the bronze and gold medal games, and then because we're both expansion team beat writers for the PWHL, we're going to talk a little bit about what the expansion teams need to do before the end of the season, since we're about to get back to PWHL hockey. But first, let's start with the number one at the nine. So, as we're recording this, we're less than 24 hours away from the gold and bronze medal games here in Italy. Sweden and Switzerland, well, not here in Italy, in Italy. Sweden and Switzerland will be competing for bronze as they did in the 2014 Winter Olympics in Sochi, and then Canada and the US will face off for gold as they have in every single Olympics except for 2006. For the US, they'll need to play their game, the game that has gotten them to the finals as the only undefeated team. In her gold medal game preview for the Ice Garden, Melissa Burgess said that special teams will be crucial for both teams. They both need to stay out of the penalty box, and the U.S. will do well to draw penalties, draw Canada into some trouble there, which they have been doing a lot. As for Sweden and Switzerland, goaltending is going to be key. In my bronze medal game preview, I stressed how important goaltending has been for both teams in this tournament, and I expect we will see a battle of goaltenders to take bronze. We're going to talk more about the medal rounds, but let's talk about the quarterfinals and semifinals first. So, last week, Reed and I talked about the great work from Italy to make their first quarterfinals, and then the misery of being paired up with the U.S. They lost that game 6-0, moving the U.S. onto the semifinals. Italy's goaltender Gabriella Durante, who I grew up playing hockey with, actually, she's from here. She really impressed a lot of people. I saw memes about her and like trying to get her into the PWHL, which is great. I feel like that's how you know that you've made it. The next matchup was Canada and Germany. Canada won 5-1. I think both of these kind of outcomes were pretty expected. What do you think?
Yeah, totally agree. I think Italy's, run to its first Olympic quarterfinals was maybe one of the best host nation stories of these games so far.
Mm-hmm.
I think running into the US was always going to be a mismatch. The United States is kind of killing it. They're relentless. They're super structured. I think the standout from that game, like you said, was the goaltender. Facing that amount of shots, like that's brutal. And she held up super, super well under all of that pressure. I would be terrified to have, Hannah Boca in front of me like that. And I think, like you said, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw her in the PWHL. Hopefully, frankly, if we see her in the PWHL, and a lot of other of the international players, even from teams who didn't make it all the way to the quarterfinals. France's goalie. I
Mhm.
want to see her. I want to see so many of these players, and I'm really excited that we get to see them in that international space. To see what kind of players we have. I think same thing for the Canada game. Um, Canada definitely controlled that possession. They're really excellent at that net front presence, and Germany kind of didn't stand a chance. It's one of those things where I think you posted about this how there is a lot of people are talking about how there's no parity in these, but I do think we've seen probably some of the best genuine best on best international hockey and women's that we've ever seen before, and I think we're very lucky. So
I
yeah, I think
agree.
those first two matchups were according to the script. I think it was everything everybody was expecting. But I think that gap between the top two and the rest is closing every single time we get to see these players go against each other. That's fascinating.
Absolutely. I think somebody responded to that post, which actually is probably the best performing post I've ever done, which is kind of cool. And basically said we're not seeing things we've seen in the past where it's like 15 nothing, 10
Mm-hmm.
nothing. And some of that is because the group B teams didn't have to necessarily face Canada and the US. But as we'll see when we talk about the other quarterfinal matchups, we have a group B team that's playing for bronze. And Switzerland, arguably the weakest of the Group A teams in the preliminary round, they're also playing for bronze. So I agree with you. I definitely think the gap is closing a bit. And I don't know if that's because of the PWHL. I think that will be what people say is the reason for it. But I think funding and the being able to be seen on the international stage more recognition coming to those leagues other than the PWHL, I think that's all part of it.
Yeah, I think, we all say everybody watches women's sports, and I feel like a lot of the time that is a very North America based saying.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, we saw it there during the Olympics, the Summer Olympics too, with women's basketball, with the way women's basketball is growing, with the way, we were getting a women's softball or baseball league. I
Mm-hmm.
think even, yes, it's a North American thing, but I think everybody genuinely watches women's sports internationally. That's growing. And I think, like you said, yes, the PWHL, but also like another saying, if you can see it, you can be it. And I think that's also really, really helping is this access to players that we didn't have in 2006, 2010 that we do now.
Totally. And even just the production value that we have now. I remember watching some of those U18 games 5 or 10 years ago where it looked like you were watching it through a ring camera on your doorbell. Now being able to in Canada, you can watch, hockey on every channel, women's hockey on every channel every night of the week. And you can get those international games as well, highly produced, which I think definitely helps. For me, the more interesting matchups were the third and fourth games of the quarterfinals. So Czechia and Sweden, which was extremely close. One of the best games I think in the entire tournament, honestly. Two
Mm-hmm.
very good teams that play really similar style. Sweden came away with that one 2-0 with huge help from their goaltender Ebba Svensson Traff. Again, I think goaltending is going to be really big. And then in the other matchup, we saw Switzerland and Finland, which was also extremely close and also had really good goaltending. Switzerland won that game 1-0 with Andrea Brandley making 40 saves in her shutout, which is crazy. Were you surprised to see those two teams move ahead to face Canada in the US?
Not really. I think specifically for Sweden and Czechia, is that how I can only pronounce it in Spanish. Is it Czechia in English?
I think it is, but I've also heard Czechia.
Beautiful.
So
Let's use
whatever
Czech.
you want to say.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I think with that one, I do think the performance favored Czechia a little bit. For the performance coming into the tournament did favor Czechia a little bit. You know, they are a very aggressive team to play against. You know, we saw what happened when they played Canada. They're very aggressive, but I do think, you know, Sweden has really taken, you know, the better of them internationally in previous international tournaments. So when I think I wrote the preview for that, I kind of like really I thought Sweden was going to take it. I think overall it was like a game of patience. Yeah, like again, it's a goaltending game, and I think they played with a very similar like defensive structure. But Sweden was just a little bit more patient. The Czechia did. I think towards the end, you know, we saw like it was just it not chaos on Czechia's end, just a little bit desperation that just didn't nothing came out of it. I was actually I was driving to Seattle when that game was on, and I have like the NBC people on in the background to hear.
Mhm.
And when like the first like final 5 minutes, I like genuinely had to pull over on the side of the highway to watch the game because I was like, I need to know how this is going to end. Because yeah, it sounded like there was just again, I think Czechia was just super desperate, but nothing to come out of that. And same with Switzerland versus Finland, like that goaltending, like that's I would say the goaltending performance of the tournament, stopping 40 shots in a 1-0 shot, like that's crazy. I think like they definitely trusted their goaltender, and that's really what you have to do in those situations. I wouldn't say, like I said, surprised. Definitely impressed by both Sweden and Switzerland to get to where they are. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, that's you know, it's exactly again exactly what we expect when you have elite goaltending is
Yeah.
really in these situations is really what we're going to see.
Absolutely. And then we went into the semifinal game. So again, things were pretty predictable here, I would say. The US beat Sweden 5-0, and Canada beat Switzerland 2-1. That game was stressful. Um, Canada has never had a margin of error that tight in a semifinal game, so they've always been ahead by more than one goal. I think it's both kudos to Switzerland and a concerning last game before they have to face the US again from Canada.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't know. I think there was a lot of pre Olympics when you know we were just watching the rivalry series and we watched how that played against the U.S. or against Canada, right? I think there was, and I'll include myself on there because I also tweeted about this. Everybody was like, "Is Canada cooked?" And I think that still unfortunately continues to be the situation or the conversation within this tournament. Um, I think there's a like you said, there is that twofold of like one, Switzerland has an incredible defensive structure that we've seen throughout the tournament. And again, you have to trust your goalie, and they totally trust their goalie. But also, just Canada's ability to separate themselves from like these disciplined defensive teams. It's just it sucks.
Mhm.
Um, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah. And I mean, it was I as a non-Canadian, right? I just live in North America, you know. But as I really have no allegiance other than to Hillary Knight herself. But like Switzerland, like watching Switzerland, like generally force Canada, like one of the like you have some of the I mean not some of the greatest hockey players on that team, and you force them to really grind it out, like that's just genuine beauty of a hockey game we got to see.
Absolutely. And for me, like, I feel like that hockey game was basically Marie-Philippe Poulin versus Switzerland.
Mhm.
I think she was going to do literally any possible thing she could do to claw Canada into that gold medal game,
And
and
did.
not even Switzerland could deal with that. But if she had not played because she is clearly still injured,
Mhm.
or yeah, they managed to shut down literally every other player on the Canadian team aside from her, which is just extremely impressive. They had fantastic goaltending again. Andrea Brandley, I think she made 45 saves in that game. So it's just like it's a great thing for Switzerland, but I think, like you said, it showed Canada's weaknesses. And going into a game now against the undefeated US that is I would like to have come out of that game if I was Canada with a 5-0 win like the US had over Sweden and not a 2-1 win.
Yeah, you need that
So
confidence.
yes, exactly. Yeah, you do. And also, I think I said this to somebody, but if Poulin was out there doing all of the things that she was doing, and that as her teammate in this hypothetical situation did not get me fired up and wanting to go and help her, I don't know what you can do. Like, even when she got the penalty after she scored, she was in the box, she was like in the game. And I really think we needed to see that from the rest of the Canadian team, and we didn't. So that needs to come into play for the
Yeah,
gold
I was
medal.
standing in front of Tibi and I was like, "Where's your rage?" You know that meme that's like, "Rise, rise, where's your rage?" Like, where is
Yeah,
it here?
exactly. Like there needs to be some drive to win this game and not walk into it thinking that it's going to be easy.
Yeah.
So Sweden and Switzerland are playing for bronze. They are up first tomorrow, or Thursday when you're listening to this. There are a couple interesting points here for me. So they've not played each other yet in this tournament, which is also interesting. I think that sets up, it's not like either of them have this like idea of what the other team is going to be like because they've played them already. They don't have any baggage from that, like Canada and the US. And as we've been talking about, goaltending is going to be really, really important. Andrea Brandley is very experienced at the international level. And then Svensson Traff has kind of like come up for this tournament. I'm not sure who wrote the Sweden preview for the Ice Garden, but they talked about her and kind of singled her out. And I'm a big Emma Soderberg fan. And I was like, well, I think Emma Soderberg will just get all the games because she is an elite level goaltender. She is great. And then honestly, like Svensson Traff has really shown up. So yeah, what are you kind of thinking about for this bronze medal game? I think it'll be close. What are you thinking?
Yes. Yeah, I also think it will be close. I think, again, like you said, goaltending is going to be the thing. I think goaltending has been the storyline for the whole tournament for pretty much every team from Japan to France, Italy, every team we've seen. It's been goaltending on goaltending. I think first goal wins. Whoever gets to score that first goal, that's going to be the winner. I think Sweden has shown that they can win those low level events though. So if they score first and like genuinely lock in defensively, I think they've shown that they're super comfortable in suffocating their opponents. So if anything, like that'll be helpful for them, as long as they can maintain that patience that we've seen them have. Like that is how you do it. But I mean, outside of that, I think based on your preview angle, I think another key factor is again that discipline. Both teams rely super heavily on their structure, and I think like their special teams. I think special teams is the other storyline here. Is like we've seen some really incredible special teams work across the tournament. I think we will continue to see that in this bronze medal game.
I agree. And yeah, in the preview, I was looking at the stats, and Sweden has one of the strongest power plays in the tournament, and Switzerland's penalty kill is not super strong. So I agree. I think special teams will play a part, and discipline, and the Swiss need to make sure that they're not putting themselves in a position where they have to face the Swedish power play. But I agree. I think that will be a really exciting game. I'm hoping that it will be close. I agree with you. I think first goal wins kind of thing. We haven't seen that much scoring from those two teams this tournament. They haven't really been blowing anybody out. So yeah, I think it'll be a close one. And I think it's really either team's win here. We'll talk about our predictions in a minute, but then it'll be Canada and the US for gold. I probably sound like a broken record because I think I've talked about this in every podcast episode I've done. I don't think Canada is up to the task of taking on this American team, but I'm interested in your thoughts, especially because you're viewing it more from the American angle.
Yeah, and I will also say I'm also viewing it from the Seattle Torrent angle, right?
Yes.
Because at this point we've had every Seattle Torrent player on that team score a goal. So I think like I don't know. I like you. I agree. I don't think one, I don't think Canada. I think Canada came in incredibly confident into this tournament, and I don't think that confidence has gone through. I think the United States is having this incredible youth moment with, we've got Layla Edwards, we've got all of these incredible players who are there for the first time, scoring multiple goals for the first time. And their special teams with Alex Carpenter leading that have been incredibly dangerous. They've drawn every single penalty known to mankind incredibly effectively, and they've converted on all of those. I think Canada is, as they've shown, they're resilient, but their offensive isn't as explosive as it needs to be against this USA team. And they're like, they have the physicality, they have the structure, but they just haven't been consistent, right? I do think they're really hinging on MPP. I think they're hinging on MPP a little bit too much, and that is just going to continue to like lessen their blow, basically, of like scene. I think for Canada to win, in this the ideal situation for a lot of Canadians, for Canada to win, they need to slow that game down. And I think they, again, that in the same way we've seen with other teams, this patience, that there needs to be this patience. They need to be more established on their physicality. Again, they're super physical, but like established physicality below the goal line would be ideal. And then the net front battle, you got to get there. You got to get there, because Erin Frankel is going to stop you.
Well, exactly. And I think that is kind of the thing that we haven't necessarily seen this tournament. Like, she has gotten a bazillion shutouts. That's not mathematically correct, obviously. She has been playing fantastic in terms of how her stats look, but I also don't think she's been challenged nearly as much as she normally is, especially playing behind Boston normally. And yeah, like that to me is, we don't like, Canada has been having difficulty scoring, and now they're going against ultimately the best goaltender in the tournament. So I agree with you. I think scoring also needs to come from more than one person. I saw today that the Toronto Scepters tweeted that Daryl Watts is the highest scoring PWHL player apparently in the Olympics right now, and I honestly could not tell you that she had done anything this tournament. Like, I was surprised to see that. Great for her, and she has a lot of assists, which is what has kind of gotten her there. But I would like to see Fillier get on the board. I would like to see Watts. I would like to see Nurse, Malte, Spooner, like any of those people. I'd really like to see them step up, because they can't just rely on Poulin to score. And so, yeah, I think definitely there needs to be kind of a depth scoring that comes in there. For the US, I feel like, I mean, we talked about what Melissa had in her preview, but do you agree that they just kind of need to keep doing what they've been doing for this tournament?
Yeah, I think discipline is genuinely that number one. And continue drawing those penalties. I wouldn't be surprised if that's the key goal this gold medal game. Get Alex Carpenter, get that power, like that first power play team, everything they need to get those goals in. And then just that continuous like drawing of traffic towards the goaltender. I think, I don't know if there's anything huge to change. Like you shouldn't actually do any changes to a team that's already undefeated.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And Reed and I talked last week about the Abby Murphy of it all, drawing all those penalties. It will be interesting to see if the IIHF makes any changes to how they approach her. We've seen in the last couple of games, they are very quick to call to help not help her draw penalties, but they don't necessarily see what the NCAA referees see, because the NCAA referees are used to reffing against her. So it'll be interesting to see if they kind of call a different game. For the top shelf prediction this week, Reed last week predicted that a team other than Canada or the US would make the gold medal game. They were unfortunately wrong. We are still following the script. But what is your prediction for the final medal ranking? Gold, silver, bronze?
I have US gold, Canada silver, and then my heart really, really calls Switzerland to bronze.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay, I'm the same. I think it will be gold for the US. Canada will get silver, and then I'm going to go with Sweden for the bronze. I think their stats are a little bit better than Switzerland, so if everything goes to the way that the stats look, then I think it'll be Sweden, but it's the Olympics. Anything could happen.
Anything can happen. Yeah.
Speaking of, let's talk about the PWHL because somehow the season is back on February 26th, which is really not much of a break at all for the Olympic athletes. So you and I have both been covering expansion franchises this season,
Mhm.
and both of the teams we cover have faced similar starts to the season. I think expectations were very high and execution was quite poor. Were you expecting to see this start for Seattle?
Yeah, I think I was. I think early on there was a lot of hype and I think a lot of anger from a lot of the non-expansion fans to be like, "Oh, well now, Vancouver's gonna win the cup and all of this." I mean, it takes a minute, right? It takes a minute to get used to the surroundings, to get used to the city, and also to get used to each other, to get used to people you've like been facing off against for the better
Mm,
part of like a year or 2 years. And I definitely don't think that it's an effort thing. They're struggling again through that chemistry. We're especially for Seattle, we've seen the struggle for depth scoring. We're really hinging on that Olympic Bilka Knight Carpenter line, the defensive timing. Seattle has had some stretches where they look really dangerous and super cohesive, but they haven't consistently finished. And I mean, I think maybe outside of the fact that their power play has been really good and was like
mhm.
top power play for a bit. I think it's just realistic what we're seeing, but the underlying effort has definitely been there. And I mean, there's always Hannah Murphy. There is always Hannah Murphy.
Yeah, and she has been definitely a good surprise for the team. I would say you and I often we are both big Corinne Schroeder fans.
Mhm.
And we often text each other just being like, "Oh, another another Hannah Murphy game, another Hannah Murphy game." Um so I think Vancouver has struggled for a lot of the same things. Like I do think the fact that both expansion teams are going through the same kind of slow start definitely gives kind of some credence to that chemistry issue. It's not that the players aren't good, it's not that the effort's not there. It's just that it's really hard to build a team from scratch essentially. And the depth scoring is definitely Vancouver has basically just had Sarah Nurse and
Mhm.
that's it. So, and a couple of their defenders. So, what do you think changes for Seattle coming out of this break? We know that the non-Olympic players have been getting a lot of ice time in. They've been getting to know their teammates a bit more, working on some things. So, what do you think is going to happen?
Yeah, I'm really hoping for some role clarity. I think, one thing about the Torrent is that we get pretty much the same lineup every game. I would love to. I'm really hoping that there was some time there to see where other players can fit in and fit out on our lineups, and then also just kind of refine that system a little bit. What can the Torrent, especially those bottom players, do better so that all of the pressure isn't waiting for Alex Carpenter to get back on the ice. Um, but like that, and yeah, that adjustment, I'm really hoping it's that depth scoring. I think when Seattle is gets production beyond their top line, we saw, I think off the top of my head, I think it was that game in Dallas where, I mean, they still lost, but like there was, did they lose? Fact check me on that. I don't remember.
I don't know. There's
Yeah.
been too many takeover games.
Yeah. Once Seattle, gets that production on that top line, they're very competitive. But when they don't, they're basically changing. So if they can tighten those like neutral zone gaps
Mhm.
and improve the efficiency of the power play without having to rely so much on Alex Carpenter, I think they can absolutely make the second half more competitive as long as we can find the pace on that secondary scoring. Like, please, please, please. Like, these are your top players coming back to the Olympics. Let's give them a break. Find yourself some points, find yourself some goals.
Absolutely. And I mean, one thing that we do know about this league, and I think I say this every week, is that the standings could look very different between now and the playoffs. And whether Vancouver and Seattle make the playoffs or not, obviously, like that is to be seen. But being towards the bottom or at the bottom of the standings in February does not mean that you will be playing for that first overall draft pick at the end of April. Like things can change so much. So, yeah, I think it'll be very interesting to see how teams fare after the Olympics as well. We've seen in previous seasons where we've had an international break and it's really jostled up the kind of flow that some of the teams have had before they came out of that break. So I think it'll be super interesting. Thank you so much for joining us today, Sylvia. This 30 minutes has flown by. um,
Yes.
I'm wishing everyone in the future a very happy Canada gold medal, perhaps. Maybe
Okay.
not. Where can listeners find you? I'll link everything down below, but let them know.
Yeah, folks can find me covering the Seattle Torrent at the Ice Garden. Just look up my name and across Twitter, mostly at Badnans, Badnands. I really need to change my Twitter handle. I just haven't decided
I
on
like
what.
it.
But yeah, I'm usually tweeting about the PWHL and society more often than not.
Yeah, exactly. And the takes are great. So definitely go follow. Thank you all for listening. Don't forget to subscribe to the Ice Garden and the Nine Sports. Things are going to be changing a little bit in terms of the way that subscriptions work and stuff. But for now, if you're getting emails from both, you're doing a good job. And we'll see you next week. We'll talk about who won and the rest of the teams as we go back into the second half of the PWHL season. Thanks.
Bye.